Excuse me, I have a question.
Sure.
Who are you?
Who am I?
Yes.
My name's Brittany.
Okay, that's your name. Is that who you are?
I don't know. Who knows?
Pretty good question, isn't it?
That is a good question.
Thank you for playing.
You're welcome.
This is the billing office for Tri-City Medical Center. Calling for Jason Ross. If you are Jason Ross, press 1 now. If Jason is not available, press 2.
Hello, tell me you know. Yeah, you figured me out.
I am a free
Something
soul.
gave it away. It would be such a beautiful moment to see the look on your face, to know that I know that you know now. And baby, that's a case of my wishful thinking. You know nothing. Well, you and I, why we go carrying on for hours on end. We get along much better than you and your boyfriend. Well, all I really wanna do is love you. I can't much closer than
You ask someone, who are you? They inevitably, invariably, almost always respond with either their legal name or they will make reference to an association or a relationship with you. Who are you? They'll say, I'm your neighbor. What the hell are you doing in my tub? Who are you? I'm a police officer. I'm here because your neighbor called me about you being in his tub. If you go ask someone, who are you? It's a pretty fun little experiment, and you'll find that if you're dealing with someone at a restaurant, they will identify their position within that restaurant. They'll say, hi, who are you? I'm Martha, I'm your hostess. And it makes me think, are we in fact our jobs? We don't say, hi, I'm Rob. Well, actually, a lot of people might say things like, hi, I'm Rob, I'm an Apple owner. But I think it's pretty sad when we start defining ourselves by either our legal name or our association with other people. Now, the big problem I see with this is that it starts limiting our capacity and our capabilities. If you are always just the legal name that you had when you were an infant, a child, how can that be to your benefit if that name identifies an infant or a child and you're no longer an infant or a child? So, having thought about that, this lesson, this is about knowing who you are by realizing what you are.
but I never said a word. I guess I'm gonna miss my chance again.
Okay, so now it's Tuesday. You can trust Tuesday. Tuesdays are generally, well, they're up and ready to go. They're fresh and ready to go. Mondays, they're full of promises and disappointment. Mondays are the politicians of the weeks, of the days of the week. Yeah. Mondays are the politicians of the days of the week because they're full of nothing but promises and disappointment. What's up with you, Monday? I like Wednesdays too. Wednesdays you can trust. Wednesdays, they got some dirt under their nails. They're standing in the field, hump day, very little to say, just but getting the work done. Yeah, Wednesdays you can trust. Thursdays not so much so. Thursdays are always trying to catch up to Wednesday, and, well, you know, they're an understudy for Friday. They're a Friday wannabe. And because of that, they're always torn. Never gonna be as strong as a Wednesday, never gonna be as cool as Friday. Thursday's like the middle child. Fridays, of course, are cool, eh? They're always the ones who, well, you know, it's Friday. They're the ones who show up at the party with the hottest women and the coolest drugs. Yeah. Yeah. Fridays are pretty much, they would be king of the week except for Saturday. Because Saturday holds all the promise. Yeah. Saturday, you got time to do whatever you want. You've still got your nightlife time. You've got your early morning. Saturdays really are king of the week. And it could have been made that Sunday would be cool, but Sunday, well, they had to make, Sunday I think is, I don't know about Sundays too much because it should be a time where you're out and you're chasing butterflies and just having pure fun. But instead, Sunday had to go make it all about itself. So that now you got to go and get in stuffy buildings and say words that other people wrote thousands of years ago. Yeah, Sunday, I think Sunday whored herself out. That's why Mondays are so hard, I think. Here we are back at Lesson 8, Fundamentals of Freedom. This big question, who are you? Now, folks, it's a difficult question for anyone to ask, and certainly I cannot answer that for you. What I can do is reveal to you what I have learned from this journey that I have undertaken. The whole question seems to be, and as I said, you ask someone, who are you? They tend to respond with either their legal name or their relationship with you within a certain structure.
Excuse me. Sorry to bother you. I'm working on a little video production. I'm wondering if I can ask you a very quick question. Who are you?
Who am I? I'm Kaylee.
That's just your name.
Yeah.
Is your name who you are?
It has to be. Everybody's got a name for a reason, right?
Really?
Yeah.
That's very good. That's a good way to look at it.
That's a camera?
It is a camera.
It's teeny tiny.
It's teeny tiny. That's what she said.
Oh, no.
Thank you very much for your time. Have a good
If you're in a restaurant, they'll say, I'm your waitress. If they're your neighbor, they'll say, I'm your neighbor. If they're your member of your family, they'll say, I'm a member of your family, and define their position within that family. This is all who they are within a predetermined or a presumed structure. This is why when cops come and ask you, who are you, what is your name, they're asking for a legal name, and there is that presumed structure. That presumed structure is the legal system within which they are assuming you're operating, and the moment you give them a legal name and that you're within that structure, now they get to tell you what your legal rights and your legal duties are, and it all boils down all the time to your obligations. So your obligations will then flow to you from someone else because you have been looking at the question, who are you? And this question, who are you, will always, it seems, limit the what are you. Because the who will create obligations, no doubt. You're not going to be escaping obligations. But these obligations will be a function of someone else's structure, someone else's words. Someone else will place legal rights and duties upon you. That's why when at the beginning of this lesson I mentioned that accepting the who will limit your what, whereas embracing the what will actually expand the who. Let's say who you are, let's say you want to be a world famous musician and you have no musical talent as of yet. When you define yourself by your legal name and your legal rights and duties, there will be no musician in there. And therefore, getting to a place where you have achieved that is going to be very, very difficult because you're starting with the who you are now instead of the what you are now. So what is the what you are now? That's your real self. And your real self, once you start embracing who you really are, then you start to see that it's really a function of your will. If you have no will, it doesn't matter what else you have. You're just a pile of pudding. you're not going to be doing too much now, are you? Now, as long as you have will, you've got to start. But if you don't have ethics and morals, you've got to start. But if you don't have ethics and morals, then you're not going to have very much. It's kind of like having a ship with no compass, no sails. You're not going to have the direction that you need, and you're not going to have the strength that you need to get to where you want to go. And then, of course, you need to have ability, and you need to develop these abilities based upon your will, your ethics, your morals. Once you are embracing your real self and you are operating upon a knowledge of the fact that you have free will, that you have the ability to develop and bring forth your own ethics and morals and to grow your ability, then you get into a position where when it comes to obligations, it is you who are determining these. And when these people, other people come to you and say, who are you? You get to define by the existence of your obligations exactly who you are. And who you are is now nothing that limits you, what you are. That's why people who want to control you, they want authority over you, they never come and ask you what you are. What you are means you are fully empowered above them. Who you are means the exact opposite. And the World Freeman Society is essentially created to help bring this about. In Canada, many people will have, who here has their motor vehicle license? Who has their motor vehicle license and did not read or read the Motor Vehicle Act before applying for their license? No one does that. Chances are that you never read the Criminal Code of Canada until you're at a point where they're trying to charge you with something under it. Then it becomes interesting to you and you start looking. If you look in the Criminal Code, you will find in section 38 and 39, it refers to using a claim of right. And then if you look at section 126 and 127, it makes reference to, oh, come on in, you can grab a seat, there's plenty of room. It makes reference to the fact that if you have lawful excuse, you can in fact disobey the government and the courts. These governments and courts, they're operated by people. These people are equal with us, and essentially you establish lawful excuse to disobey them merely by serving a notice on them, telling them that you do not consent to them governing you anymore. Now the problem that you'll face is that a lot of us have been conditioned and trained in high school to get to a certain place in moral development and stop there. Who here is familiar with Kohlberg's moral development theories? No? This guy is a pretty smart guy. He developed this theory on moral development, and I think what you'll find, a lot of people, when you get to the point where you start trying to exercise your freedom under this manner, you will find that you're dealing with cops, and the cops are going to be trying to impose their will upon you. And you'll be in a bit of a battle with them in order to determine who's in charge of who. Now, Kohlberg, he essentially stated that moral development, we all go through certain stages, although some of us, many of us actually, get locked into a certain level. And the first one, if I can find it here, the first stage of moral development essentially is avoiding punishment. Like every child, they'll do what they're told because they want to avoid getting hurt. The second stage in it is going to be where they ask, what's in it for me? Read this. Then the third stage starts where they refer to it refers to peer pressure. You'll see a lot of this in high school where people decide what is right and what is wrong to do based on the consequences of not doing it within their social group. The fifth one then becomes authority and law and order, and that's where many people just get stuck, and you're going to be dealing with cops with guns who believe that the highest level of moral development is in fact the law and order category. And they are operating from this perspective where they honestly believe that they have the moral high ground. Kohlberg theorizes that there are in fact other levels of this moral development, and the second level, or the third stage, and there's 3 stages with 2 in each one. The third stage is where you start looking at you're going to do what you do. You decide on a moral course of action because it's beneficial to your society. Chances are most of you who are here, if you're living in this environment with a communal type artistic environment, you're likely at that stage where you decide what you are going to do based on what is best for your entire group. The sixth stage is where you are going to be operating based on universal principles, and it doesn't matter who comes at you with what. You are going to be operating with those universal principles, and it doesn't matter what the law and order crowd does and comes and says. Essentially, what I equated it to, I wonder if I even brought the right book. I equated it to you're going into grade school and you see a hall monitor. And this hall monitor, a little kid, thinks, oh, you're in the hall and you're not in class, and he doesn't even recognize you as an adult, and he says, okay, I'm going to take you to the principal's office. And you say, fine, yeah, I want to go talk to him, and suddenly he realizes that he's not dealing with a kid, he's dealing with an adult. When you deal with these cops, they are going to look, they automatically look at us. When we start saying, no, I'm not going to be accepting your will on me in order to get me to engage in a certain action, they're going to believe that you are avoiding, that you are seeking to avoid your duties, and that you are abandoning law and order.
Just grab my board, which is out there.
So the fight then becomes getting them to realize that you're not abandoning law and order at all, but that you are in fact growing in a moral manner. Okay, screw it if I don't see it this time.
You can tell they did bring me wrong, though.
Oh, here it is. No. Yeah, the first one is a pre-conventional one where you're concerned mostly with obedience and avoiding punishment. Second one is self-interest. The third one is conformity or peer pressure. Then there's authority and order. And then your social contract, and then universal ethics. The Free Man Society, what we recognize is that we're all striving to become better human beings and to fulfill what we sense is right and wrong within us. The government comes at us and they tell us, no, you've got to follow these rules, these are your rules, this is what you have to do, and we then find ourselves in conflict with what we know is right in our heart and what we see them trying to get us to do. This becomes quite a challenge because you're going to have to educate these people who believe that law and order is the highest level of morality to the idea that there is in fact a higher level of morality, and that higher level of morality is based upon you embracing universal ethical principles of peace and compassion. If when you tell them, listen, I'm better than your law and order, and you don't demonstrate these higher universal ethical principles, they're just going to look at you as a child trying to avoid their proper governance. So the trick is, when you deal with these people, is to recognize that A, they're just people, but they are operating on a fairly high moral ground. And if you want power over them, you have to achieve a higher moral ground. Now, a lot of people here, Mike, and thanks Mike for inviting me. I wanted to thank Mike.
Thank you for coming out, Rob.
No worries.
Yeah.
He wanted me to speak a little bit about the difference of legal and lawful. Now, the difference between the two, legal is that which is affecting your person. If you have a social insurance number, you're in contract with the government, you have government issued identification. What they are looking at you as, believe it or not, you might morally be an adult, but legally they do not look at you as an adult. You have the exact same status now as you had when you were a little infant. And because you didn't change that status, they still look at you as a child of the province and a ward of the state. So until you break that presumption and you tell them, listen, I'm not your ward, I'm not your child, and these rules that you're trying to impose on me are only for the children, and I am no longer a child, and then you demonstrate that you're not, then they will feel comfortable letting you go. Otherwise, they will feel that they have a duty over you. Now, a lot of people will think that they can, you might have heard something along the lines of redeeming your straw man or seizing your straw man or something along that lines, or acting as agent for your person. I don't believe you can do any of this. Am I speaking over anyone's head here? Like, does anyone not know what I'm talking about?
Trademarked your name or any likeness of your name.
Yeah, even that. If you are an artist and you're engaging in something and you're actually using it in a trade, yes. But if you have never made money off your name, if you've never, you know, I mean, the only time I've seen anyone successful with that was when it was a musical artist who wanted to stop someone else from using the same name. And it all came down to whether or not the public would be confused by the two, by the difference. So, and I see no real strength in it. It's, imagine a child who wears diapers, and now the child wants to claim that he's old enough that he doesn't need you to look after him, so he writes his name on his diaper, and he says, see, now I'm acting as agent for my diaper, and now I'm a big boy. You're not a big boy yet. You're still wearing diapers. It doesn't matter what name you put on it. Some people think that you can act as an agent for your person, but your person is evidence that you are in a relationship with the government, and that relationship means you're a child. So if you're a child, because of this relationship, you can't be going and acting as an agent for your child. You don't have the authority to do that. It's kind of like with the duties come the burdens, with the benefits come the burdens. Imagine for a moment a man and a woman, they get married, so now they're husband and wife. The husband goes and has sex outside of the bounds of marriage. And the wife gets upset and he says, no, wait a minute, it wasn't the husband having sex, it was just the man. And I was just acting, and the husband wasn't even there. Would that fly? Of course not. The person is always evidence of an association, of a relationship between two parties. So if you want control over that, you have to control the relationship. You can't allow the relationship to be maintained and then claim that I'm in charge of my person. A lot of people got confused because I told people you have a person, you have a person, you aren't a person. And then they start thinking, well, yeah, since I have a person, I can act as agent over it, but that's not the case. It's been rejected over and over in the courts. That person is evidence that you don't have the authority to act as agent for anyone because you're seen as a child of the province. So until you break that, and once you're no longer a child of the province, why would you need your person anyways? It's like wearing diapers, for Christ's sake. You had a question?
Can you give an example of someone acting as agent for the person, and maybe, if you are able to, like a counterexample where they're not?
Yeah, but you can't. Your person is evidence that you are in a relationship with someone else. So because of that relationship, you have rights and duties. Some people will try to say, I'm going to avoid my duties by claiming that the person is a separate entity and I'm just acting as agent for it. No. Your person, if it's your jacket and you're wearing it, they can grab it and affect you. You can either take it off, you can divorce your mate, say, and then no longer be a husband, or you can maintain your marriage and be a husband. But you can't say, okay, now I'm not acting as your husband, now I'm just acting as a man, and the husband is the agent for the man. You can't do that.
So to be your own agent is to no longer be a child of the state, and if you're no longer a child of the state, are you still a Canadian citizen?
You can be. I don't see why not. I mean, just because 100 years ago, people were Canadian citizens and they weren't tricked into being children of the state or wards of the state. So I don't see why not. It looks to me like they have tried to create some. It's kind of like nanny. We've got a nanny. Nanny realized, hey, she gets all the cookies and all the ice cream if she can convince us to remain as kids. So she convinces us to remain as kids, and now she's got her hands in the cookie jar and we're not getting anywhere near what we should be getting. And yet nanny, to a large degree, a lot of people in the government, they're not all your enemy. A lot of them are in fact what I call ghosts in the machine, who are in fact trying very hard to help people, or to help Canada become the country that we all thought it should be.
Sorry, I'm like a little new to it, but how does it all work with MSP, like medical services, and like once you're...
Do you have your birth certificate on you?
No, I lost my...
Does anyone have their birth certificate on them? If you look on your birth certificate, what happens? Look at this country. It's a pretty rich country, right? Who do you think owns all this wealth?
We do, yes.
We do.
The resource.
When you were registered as a child, imagine you own stock in Microsoft, okay? Now forget Microsoft, we'll call it Canada. You own stock in Canada. But you're a child. You are not competent to administer your own affairs and take care of your own stock. So the government gets your parents to sign it over to them. They administer it on your behalf. This generates revenue. If I can show you some birth certificates, where on the back it says revenue receipt, treasury use only. Someone received revenue. There is a receipt there for it. If you look at the value of this country, you're worth millions and millions and millions of dollars. Factor in the value of the resources, the number of people. We're worth a lot of money. What you can essentially do is you use that number to point to your fiduciary agent, and you say, hey, fiduciary agent. Essentially, it's like you're growing up, you're no longer a child, you go and you claim your stock, you administer your own affairs, instead of allowing your fiduciary agent to do it. To a large, I mean, if you were to find out that you had stock in Microsoft worth millions, and that someone who you thought was your friend just bringing you a bunch of, you know, maybe a crate of apples every week, saying, here, this is for you, and you thought he was just gifting you apples, and then you find out, you son of a bitch, I own that flippin' orchard, and you've never told me. Suddenly these boxes of apples doesn't really seem like much of a gift anymore, is it? It's almost like they were just getting you to accept it so that they could continue taking from us. These we have certain rights, and you can draw on that revenue receipt to pay for anything that Canada has recognized is a right under United Nations covenants. Education, healthcare, travel, anything like that. I broke my elbow once. I didn't have insurance. I went to the hospital. They fixed it. They sent me, they asked for insurance. They asked me for my insurance. I said, I don't have any. They said, well, here, fill out this form.
Canada or US?
And then you just have to, this was Canada. And they said, you just have to pay 3 months back pay, and then we'll cover it for you. You'll have insurance. I said, no, I don't want to do that. I felt stupid. I'm going to pay for it myself. Just give me a bill. And they refused to give me a bill. And what I realized later was they don't have the right to bill you. They have a duty to provide it already for free, regardless of whether or not you have insurance or not. So they just, why do you even have the insurance? And it's not like our value in our country can't pay for it already. It just has to come out of their pockets.
Were you born in Canada or the US?
I was born in Canada.
Now, how does this work with like things like dental, eye care? Is it all under the same roof? Can they all
Yeah,
expect
essentially, if you just ask them for a bill, they will present you with an invoice. The invoice is two parts. There'll be a bill statement, and then there'll be a smaller portion, a remittance, and they say, please send this voucher with your payment. And they want you to send that in. That thing that they want you to send in is a remittance. And if you look up the word remittance, you'll find it's a specie of money. Now imagine you go to a restaurant and the waitress brings you the bill, and she also gives you a coupon worth exactly the same amount as your bill. You know what to do then, don't you? Here, coupon pays for the bill, thank you, it zeroes out. What they do though is they call it a remittance, and they don't want you to realize that they are in fact sending you a coupon worth the same value. And you can find that if they're a member of the Canada Payment Association, bottom lower right hand corner you'll see a 96. That identifies it as a remittance, or it'll actually say remittance, or they'll say remittance voucher, and voucher again, it means it's an item of value. It's a specie of money, and it has the value assigned to it. If you accept it as valuable, send it back off. And people have been successful with it. What I suggest people do now is circle that 96 so that they know what it is, cross out remittance, write coupon. Same thing essentially, and that way they can't argue it. And then you put on there, actually there's new information. You have to write in there, like a corporation can't do it. Only you as the living, breathing human being can access this remittance option. So what you do is you sign across there saying accepted for value, exempt from levy, what was it? Non-commercial? No, not non-commercial. Consumer purchase. Then you have to put your name that's on your birth certificate, the registration number from that, and then the unknown or unidentified number. And people have had success with that. One guy discharged a $6,400 Capital One credit card with that, and they sent him a new card, and he's good to go.
What's the unknown number?
The security number, the security of your person number. It'll be either on the back in green, it'll say revenue receipt, treasury use only. It'll be in red, but it won't have anything else written. That's the number you use. The number that is unidentified as to function. Everything else will be identified as to its function.
It just says revenue receipt and the number, N-O.
Any number that's not identified as to its function is the number you want to use. I haven't seen your birth certificate, so I don't know what would be on it.
Sorry.
This guy had success. Is this on a forum somewhere? Or like,
What's that?
was this documented like on a forum by this guy?
No,
Or,
not that I know of. Alvin Mormon sent me an email, told me about it. And essentially, if you look in the Charter of Rights and Freedom, it refers to the fact that every individual has the right to the security of their person. The person is that legal entity created by way of your association with the government, acting as a fiduciary agent over that security of your person. And when you look at the security of your person, it doesn't mean protection from harm or anything like that. It's an actual physical document, just like stocks, bonds, and securities that they would sell on the market. And that is what you, as an individual, have the right to. But once you seize that security, the person no longer exists because the person is evidence that someone's holding your security for you.
So how do you pick that up?
I'm still working on it. We're making demands. Essentially, you should just be able to demand it under Section 337, but then you have to prove it actually exists. And these people, I mean, we've caught them with their hands in the cookie jar. They're not just going to roll over easily and say, well, what does this mean? They're running and hiding. They're deceivers. They don't want to get caught.
You mean 337 of the
The Criminal Code of Canada refers to demands made against anyone who is holding something by virtue of their employment with the government. If a demand is made for its return and they fail to return it, they're liable to 14 years in prison. But in order for us to get that, personally, I believe that our courts have essentially been hijacked by corporations. And that's the big problem. I mean, in order for these corporations to govern us, they can only interact with other corporations. So they impose corporate personhood upon us. They act upon that. Then if we try to break away, they claim, okay, well, you have these courts, they're only for corporations now. And what I see as remedy is we have to convene new courts where only people are heard and corporate fictions are not. They're simply, sorry, you're not heard here.
Where did this, where did this sort of, I don't know, movement, if you'd call it a movement, like sort of originate, and what positive repercussions have you had via, like, practicing these theories upon the system? Because some people want to change the system from inside of it instead of, existing from the outside.
I think it's very difficult to change a tire if you stay in the car. So,
Okay, I don't know.
well, if you're trying to change a flat tire,
Yeah.
you pretty much have to get out of the car. So some systems you simply
Yeah,
can't
but-
fix.
In your life, are you trying to be tax-free? Are you trying
Well,
to have zero income?
I'm tax-free.
Are you trying
I've
to
got
remove yourself from Canada?
Did you want me to answer your question?
Yeah, I agree.
Essentially, I pay no income tax. I have no social insurance number. Your social insurance number identifies you as a government employee. And because of that,
Was you born with one?
what's that?
You weren't
No.
registered.
No, you have to get
No,
one.
people actually, a lawyer is on record stating that a human being is born with neither name nor number and has no obligation to have either. So if a cop comes and says, what's your name? Sorry, I might not be using one today. I have no obligation to have one. Essentially, income is not, if you go out and you labor and you get paid wages, that's not income unless you're acting with your social insurance number. Then you're acting as an agent for the federal government, and the corporation that hired you as an agent. It's like if you go to a temporary work site for the day and someone calls them up and says, yeah, I need 5 laborers, so you go out for day labor, and you were actually hired by that company that sent you out, the day labor corporation, as an agent. Or you were acting as an agent for this corporation, not an employee for this one. And that's what's happening when you go and you get a job with your social insurance number. You're identified as a government agent, and that's your employee identification number. Now, you can work without that, but you have to do it under contract for hire instead of a contract for service, and you don't pay into Canada Pension Plan, unemployment, any of that stuff, but nor can you then draw from any of that.
Is that like off the books?
No, it's
Well, as a resident of Canada, you're taxable in Canada.
I'm not a resident of Canada.
Where's your home?
It doesn't matter. Resident has nothing to do with domicile.
Absolutely.
I have a domicile. I don't have a
Where's
residence.
your domicile?
It doesn't matter.
It does, because that provides where your taxable.
Mister, I don't know you at all, and I'm not giving you personal information as to where I live. I live in North
To be
Vancouver.
tax-free, you'd have to have a domicile that exists in no boundaries.
In order for me to be taxed, I must have
Then you'd have to
I
have
must
a
have
tax
an
treaty
account.
alliance.
I must have an account with Canada Revenue Agency. In order to have
Provided
an
you never
account,
earn
in
income.
order to have an account with them, I need a social insurance number. If I don't have a social insurance number, I don't have an account, and there is no mechanism for them to collect anything from me.
And this only works if you never work to earn income.
No, well, actually, income is not defined by wage. If you take money, you put it in the bank, you collect interest, that's income. If you buy stocks and you get dividends, that could be deemed income. If you go out and you work and you do construction, you get paid and you walk away with your wage, that's not income unless you're operating with a social insurance number. Then they could deem that to be income, but even then you could argue it. As for your concern, collection of taxes is a function of government. Failure, if you try collecting from me and call it a tax and you're not my lawful government, that's merely extortion. Being a lawful member of my government or lawfully governing me requires my consent. In the absence of my consent, there is no government and there's no one to collect the taxes. And I've got every right in the world to live anywhere in Canada and not have to consent to these corporations who claim that in order for me to live here, I must, consent to their governance? That's complete bull.
Does this work in any government around the world, any country? Like
any common law jurisdiction we found it in. We found it in New Zealand, Australia. It's found in Greece, in Spain, even though they're not really common law. In Canada as well, and people have found success with it in the U.S. as well, especially in Texas. And what was the other place? I think it was Florida. Someone found success with the sheriffs there who said, yeah, no, we support your right to do this, and as long as you're not collecting these services, you're good to go.
Is the province or Canada, are they a fiduciary agent right now, and who's going to be, are we going to be?
Yeah, you have to do it yourself. You have to learn to,
So then when we're free, then we'll be a fiduciary agent for ourselves.
No, because then the fiduciary agent means someone else is acting for you. You're just operating for yourself. There is no fiduciary.
Okay, so we eliminate that.
The fiduciary is because you're not operating for yourself.
So the province would be.
Well, no, you become your own.
I mean now.
Yes.
People who still
Likely.
operating
Yes,
with
I
us.
believe so.
I'm sorry, I was just wondering, was there a time, you said that at one time people weren't children of the state? When did you know when that happened? Or like,
Probably
at
about.
one time you were your own agent, but now you're saying.
Well, no, you were never your own agent.
Okay.
Yeah, you were just
unclear
a
about
citizen.
that.
You were just like my grandfather, for instance. I can remember my dad I remember my dad not having his license and refusing, saying, "Oh, I'll go get one when I need one. I don't need one right yet," because he had been a market gardener. And they brought their produce to market to Windsor, Ontario from Amherstburg. It was maybe, 2-hour drive kind of thing. No license, no permit. Every day they went to market with it. And my grandfather, I can remember my dad talking about my grandfather being told that he had to go get a license, and my grandfather saying, prove it, and then just out of spite kind of thing, refused to get one for like 3 or 4 years when they first came in back in the 30s. It was after the Depression that they started doing this, and they mostly did it. They got people to do it by saying, here, if you need benefits, you have to apply for these benefits. So then they'd apply for it, but that act identified you as someone in need, and therefore that's when the child started getting, the child of the state was created.
Technical question. If every one of us here has a social insurance number, but you from the States and yourself, how would you provide them to become like you without the number to remove themselves?
What do you mean?
How do we remove the number?
Because they've been in the taxable system.
You just
There is
abandon
an
it.
MSC.
You abandon it. You've got a right to association. You've got a right to disassociate at any time. You simply cut it up and you never use it again. And when they try to say, look, you've got this number, no, I don't.
But the CRA is going to come after you.
So what? They have to prove existence of an association between you and that number. And if you have served notice on them saying, listen, I am no longer associated with that
So
number.
serving notice is the step that everybody.
Essentially, yeah, and then you abandon your
yourself
suit.
from the
Cool
number.
to have like everyone abandon everything and like turn this. I mean, because like
I don't believe so.
Otherwise, it seems like sort of just like a
I don't believe in anarchy. I mean, if you look at true freedom, freedom is not like you look at steps. The first step is a reliance on the government, and then the second step is a rejection of that. But that leads to anarchy, and the third step is true freedom, where you have an interdependency with your fellow man, but that allows you a societal and community freedom.
What's the benefit? What's like your?
No fear. Cops pull up to me. I was sitting in West Van once, and I was drinking.
What's your fear with cops?
Well, I don't have any anymore, but
We all drink beer, you know. We all hang out. We all do whatever to a
yeah,
certain extent.
when,
but
if
like
you're
saying,
traveling
you
down
just
the
can't
road,
touch me.
if you're traveling down the road and a cop pulls in behind you,
Yeah.
don't you get a little bit nervous?
Yeah, but that's just like because they're cops.
Yeah, and that disappears. That disappears completely.